First contact, Dr. Elena Reyes had spent 15 years studying deep space signals for potential extraterrestrial communications. After thousands of false positives and millions of hours of static, she had nearly lost hope. Now, as the transmission repeated for the third time, she couldn't stop her hands from trembling. "Play it again," she whispered. Her assistant, Dr. Kamal Patel, nodded and tapped the console. The message filtered through the quantum translator once more. To all sentient species, we are the harmonious collective. A threat approaches that we cannot defeat. It consumes all in its path. If any receive this message, we plead for assistance. Coordinates follow. May the stars shine upon your mercy. It's really them, Kamal said, voice barely audible. Actual extraterrestrial intelligence. Elena nodded, staring at the transmission data. And they're terrified. Within 24 hours, every major news network on Earth was broadcasting the message. World leaders convened an emergency United Nations session while scientific teams worked frantically to verify the transmission's authenticity. The coordinates pointed to a star system roughly 12 light-years from Earth. Admiral William Chen of the United Earth Defense Force stood before the Security Council, his weathered face grim beneath the harsh lights. "The transmission is genuine," he confirmed. "And based on the quantum signature, it was sent less than 3 days ago. Whatever technology they're using, it's far beyond our current capabilities." UN Secretary-General Adaisi Okafor leaned forward. "And your recommendation, Admiral?" "We respond immediately." Chen's voice carried the weight of command. "And we prepare a relief mission. The UEDF Dauntless is our most advanced vessel, equipped with the prototype Anderson Drive. If these coordinates are accurate, we could reach their location within 6 weeks." Murmurs swept through the assembly. The Anderson Drive was humanity's first viable faster-than-light propulsion system, still considered experimental despite successful test runs to Mars orbit and back. This would be its first deep space deployment, one representative objected. "The risks are considerable," Chen finished. "But so are the implications of ignoring the first confirmed alien distress call in human history." The debate raged for hours, but the final vote was decisive. Earth would answer. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UEDF Dauntless, watching her crew prepare for humanity's first intentional contact with an alien civilization. She had been handpicked to lead this mission, her background in both military tactics and xenobiology making her uniquely qualified. "All systems nominal, Captain," her XO, Commander Jackson Hayes, reported. "Anderson Drive is green across the board," Maya nodded. "Begin final checklist. I want triple verification on life support and defense systems." The Dauntless was impressive by any standard, a kilometer-long vessel housing a crew of 250, including 40 Marines and a scientific contingent led by Dr. Elena Reyes herself. Its sleek, dark hull concealed the most advanced weapon systems humanity had ever developed. Maya hoped they wouldn't need them. "Captain, communications," Officer Lee called. "We're receiving a new transmission on the same frequency. It's different." The message played through the bridge speakers, the translation software working in real time, to the approaching vessel from the third planet. "This is High Arbiter Nix of the Harmonious Collective. We did not expect your kind to answer our call. Please confirm your intentions." Maya exchanged glances with Hayes. The aliens had somehow detected their preparations from 12 light-years away. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Maya straightened her uniform. "This is Captain Maya Rodriguez of the United Earth Defense Force vessel Dauntless. We received your distress call and are preparing to render assistance. We come in peace." There was a long pause before the response came. "Your offer is unexpected. Our records indicated your species would not yet have developed the necessary technology to reach us. More concerning, your biological classification in our archives is problematic." Maya frowned. "Problematic in what way, High Arbiter?" Another pause. Longer this time. You come from what our xenobiologists classify as a death world, Captain Rodriguez. Your gravity, atmospheric composition, radiation levels, and biological adaptations all indicate a species evolved under extreme selective pressure. Simply put, your kind should not exist by the standards of most habitable worlds, Hayes muttered, under his breath. Did we just get called space orcs? Maya silenced him with a look before responding. I assure you, High Arbiter, we pose no threat to the Harmonious Collective. We responded to your call for help because that's what humans do. Your intention to assist is noted with gratitude. However, we must warn you that direct physical contact between our species may present challenges. Your biology is potentially hazardous to most collective species. Nevertheless, our situation has grown desperate enough that we cannot refuse any aid freely offered. The message ended with detailed navigational data, wormhole entry points that would reduce their journey time from 6 weeks to just 11 days. The Dauntless emerged from its final wormhole jump into a star system, unlike anything humans had ever seen. The central G-type star was surrounded by what appeared to be enormous artificial structures, vast curved habitats constructed from materials that seemed to shift between solid and energy states, but it was the fleet that took their breath away. Thousands of vessels of varying designs orbited a massive central station. Some were small and crystalline, others vast and organic-looking, but all shared one common feature. They were breathtakingly beautiful, with flowing lines and pulsing bioluminescence. None showed any visible weapons arrays or armor plating. God, Elena whispered as she joined Maya on the bridge, an entire post-scarcity civilization. And they're running scared from something, Maya replied. Tactical, full scan. Let's see what we're dealing with. Before the scan could complete, a small vessel approached, its hull shimmering with patterns of light that seemed to form a language. Captain, they're requesting permission to dock. They're sending medical protocols? Lieutenant Commander Park at Operations sounded confused. They want us to adjust our atmospheric mixture and undergo sterilization procedures before any physical meeting. Dr. Reyes nodded. Makes sense if they consider us death worlders. Our standard bacteria could be devastating to their immune systems. Comply with their protocols, Maya ordered. First contact team to Docking Bay 2, full biohazard precautions. Maya had expected aliens to look strange. What she hadn't expected was their reaction to humans. The first representative of the Harmonious, collective to board the Dauntless, was essentially a floating crystalline entity surrounded by a containment field. It, the translator suggested she, hovered at least 3 meters from the human delegation despite the extensive decontamination procedures both parties had undergone. I am Arbiter Lise, the crystal being communicated, its thoughts converted to sound by the translator matrix. I serve as xenobiological liaison to High Arbiter Nix. Your journey here was expeditious. Thank you for the navigational assistance, Maya replied. I'm Captain Rodriguez. This is Dr. Reyes, our lead scientist, and Commander Hayes, my executive. Officer. The crystal entity pulsed with bands of color that the translator didn't interpret. Your physical forms are remarkable. Your density alone would crush most council species, and your internal temperature would cause severe burns to any who touched you. Elena stepped forward carefully. We're equally fascinated by your physiology. Arbiter Lise, our species has dreamed of this moment for centuries. Yet you came armed, Lys observed, light patterns shifting toward deeper hues. Maya didn't deny it. Standard protocol for unknown situations. We hope not to need our weapons. A concept many collective species find difficult to process, Lys responded. Most have evolved past the necessity of physical defense mechanisms, which is why we now face extinction. She gestured with a crystalline appendage, and a holographic display appeared between them, showing what looked like a moving void, a wave of absolute nothingness consuming stars as it advanced. We call it the null tide, Lise explained. It first appeared at the outer edge of collective space 2 stellar cycles ago. It is not a physical entity as you understand matter. It exists partially in quantum subspace, consuming energy in all forms, leaving nothing behind. The display zoomed in to show a once thriving world being enveloped. Where the darkness passed, nothing remained, not atmosphere, not oceans, not even the rocky planetary core. Our scientists believe it may be a manufactured weapon from a long-extinct civilization, or perhaps a natural phenomenon we've never encountered before. Regardless, conventional energy weapons are useless against it. Matter-based barriers simply dissolve. We've lost 17 worlds and billions of lives already. Maya studied the footage, her tactical mind already assessing. And what makes you think we can help? By your own admission, we're technologically behind the collective. Lise pulsed with what the translator interpreted as solemn resignation. Because you evolved on a world that tried to kill you every day of your existence. Because your species' history is written in adaptation and survival against impossible odds. Because you understand something the collective has forgotten over millennia of peace. And what's that? Hayes asked. How to fight when there is no hope of victory. The strategy session aboard the collective's central command station, a structure they called the Concordance, made it clear just how desperate the situation had become. Representatives from 27 different species attended, each more exotic than the last. Some existed as pure energy within containment fields, others as hive minds of smaller organisms. A few appeared vaguely humanoid, though none shared Earth's high-gravity, oxygen-rich evolutionary path. Maya stood beside High Arbiter Nix, an imposing figure composed of what appeared to be living liquid metal that constantly flowed and reformed as they reviewed the collective's failed defense attempts. We established energy barriers at these coordinates, Nix explained, manipulating the holographic display. The null tide simply flowed around them, as if seeking the path of least resistance. Like water, Maya murmured. Have you tried physical projectiles? Matter interaction rather than energy? The assembled representatives exchanged what she interpreted as concerned glances. We have not manufactured weapons of physical destruction. In over 800 years, one multi-limbed entity responded. Such concepts are distasteful. Maya took a deep breath. With respect, what's more distasteful, creating weapons or extinction? Silence fell across the chamber. Your perspective is valued, Captain Rodriguez, Nix finally answered. But understand that for many of our species, the very concept of harming another conscious entity is physically repulsive. Evolution on peaceful worlds selected against aggression. Dr. Reyes, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. Which is precisely why you need us. Humans evolved on a world where everything, the gravity, the weather, the other life forms, tried to kill us. We survived because we learned to fight back. And this is why we call your world a death world, Nix acknowledged. A classification that is both terrifying and now perhaps our salvation. The holographic display shifted to show the null tide's projected path. It would reach the Concordance within 60 days. The Dauntless is just one ship, Maya said frankly. But Earth can send more. We'll need to transmit everything you know about this null tide back to our scientists. Already I sense violence in your strategic thinking, observed a gaseous entity floating near the ceiling. You plan to attack this force? I plan to defeat it, Maya corrected. And yes, that probably means attacking it. Unless you have another suggestion that hasn't already failed? High Arbiter Nix's liquid metal form rippled. The Collective Council has approved temporarily suspending our non-aggression principles. Given the existential threat we face, we will follow your lead, Captain. Maya nodded grimly. Then the first step is reconnaissance. We need to understand what we're fighting before we engage. I need volunteers for a close observation mission. The chamber fell silent again until a slender, avian-like being stepped forward, its feathered crest rising. "I am Talix of the Sci-Fi. Our vessels are the fastest in the collective fleet. We will guide your observation mission." "And I will accompany you," Lise added, surprising everyone. "If we are to work with humans, one of us must understand them better." Maya met the crystal being's gaze, or what she assumed was its equivalent. "Fair warning, Arbiter Lys. You may not like what you learn about us." "On the contrary, Captain," Lys responded, pulsing with complex patterns. "I suspect we will discover that the universe has a profound sense of irony." "How so?" "That after eons of peaceful existence, the harmonious collective's salvation would come from creatures we once feared too dangerous to contact." The crystal entity's colors shifted to something almost warm. "Perhaps the Death World perspective is exactly what we need." As Maya returned to the Dauntless to prepare for the reconnaissance mission, she received a private transmission from Earth. Admiral Chen's face appeared on her screen, looking grave. "Captain, the Security Council has reviewed the data you've sent. We're mobilizing everything we've got. The entire defense fleet is being retrofitted with Anderson drives." Maya felt her heart rate increase. "Sir, that's over 40 ships." 47, Chen corrected. "If this null tide is as dangerous as the collective claims, and if it continues on its current trajectory, it will eventually reach human space. This isn't just about helping aliens anymore, Captain. It's about the survival of our species, too." Maya stared at the star field visible through her viewport, thinking of the 17 worlds already lost. "We'll be ready for them, sir." "I know you will, Rodriguez." Chen paused. "One more thing. The collective sent us additional files on human biological classification in their database. Apparently, we're not just Death Worlders." "Sir, according to their evolutionary standards, we're apex predators who evolved sentience, something they consider as statistically improbable as lightning striking the same spot 1,000 times in sequence." A grim smile crossed his face. "They're terrified of us, Rodriguez. Try not to confirm their worst fears." The transmission ended, leaving Maya alone with the weight of two civilizations' expectations. Outside her window, the vast fleet of the harmonious collective glittered like stars against the void, beautiful, advanced, peaceful, and utterly unprepared for what was coming. "Well," she murmured to herself, "humanity always wanted to meet aliens. We just never imagined they'd need monsters to save them." Cultural collision, Commander Jackson Hayes had never considered himself squeamish. 15 years in the UEDF had exposed him to everything from low-gravity battlefield surgery to radiation burns. But watching Arbiter Lys consume nutrients made his stomach churn. The crystalline being had extended filaments into a swirling solution of rare minerals, absorbing them directly through its lattice structure. Light rippled through its body with each passing moment, creating patterns Hayes found simultaneously beautiful and alien. "You appear disturbed, Commander," Lys observed, retracting its feeding filaments. "Just adjusting," Hayes admitted. "On Earth, we have a saying, 'One person's meat is another's poison.' An apt metaphor. Your own consumption methods would be equally disturbing to most collective species. The mechanical breakdown of organic matter through chemical dissolution, the grinding of food between calcium-based protrusions, many would find it barbaric." Hayes laughed. "When you put it that way, I see your point." They were sitting in what the collective called a shared perspective chamber aboard the reconnaissance vessel Prismatic Insight. The room featured environmental zones for different species, allowing interaction without contamination risks. Hayes remained in a human-compatible atmosphere behind a barely visible containment field, while Lys hovered in a low-gravity, mineral-rich environment. "May I ask you something that puzzles me about humans?" Liss inquired, its crystalline structure reorienting toward Hayes. Fire away. That's an expression meaning go ahead, he added hastily. I've been studying your historical archives. Your species has spent most of its existence fighting itself. Why? Hayes considered the question carefully. Resources, ideology, misunderstandings, fear of differences. Take your pick. Yet you stopped. Your last global conflict was over a century ago. We didn't stop because we became peaceful, Hayes said. We stopped because we got better at compromise, because we realized we couldn't afford another world war with our technology. Mutually assured destruction is a powerful motivator for diplomacy. Liss pulsed with colors that the translator interpreted as contemplation. You developed weapons so terrible you feared using them? So you chose peace instead? Something like that. Most collective species evolved without significant aggression genes. Violence never became our primary adaptation. Hayes leaned forward. Then how do you handle predators on your worlds? Most collective homeworlds have few apex predators. Those that exist develop symbiotic rather than predatory relationships with sentient species. Liss paused. Which explains our inadequacy against the null tide. We lack the instinct to fight when threatened. You survived this long without it, Hayes pointed out. Because nothing threatened us, Liss countered. Until now. Their conversation was interrupted as Captain Rodriguez entered, accompanied by Talix, the avian Seraphi navigator. The feathered being's plumage shimmered with iridescent patterns that Hayes had learned indicated anxiety. We've reached the observation point, Maya announced. The null tide is approximately 500,000 kilometers away and holding steady. Holding? Hayes asked, rising to his feet. I thought it was constantly advancing. It appears to be consuming something, Talix explained, voice melodic despite the translator's mechanical undertones. A rogue gas giant that drifted into its path. This gives us an opportunity to observe it closely without immediate danger. Dr. Elena Reyes had converted a section of the Prismatic Insights Science Bay into a makeshift human laboratory, working alongside collective researchers to analyze the null tide. They maintained a respectful distance from one another, necessity, overcoming their mutual biological discomfort. It's not matter as we understand it, Elena said, studying the readings from the ship's advanced sensors. It exists partially in quantum subspace, which is why conventional energy weapons pass right through it. Soreth, a gelatinous being with multiple sensory tendrils, bobbed in agreement. Our theories suggest it may be consuming the fundamental quantum fabric of space-time itself, converting it to some form of dark energy. Elena frowned at the displays. If that's true, then conventional weapons would be useless regardless of power output. You can't shoot something that exists between dimensions, which is precisely why our attempts failed. Soreth's body rippled with defeat. Elena tapped her datapad thoughtfully. But what if we approach this from the opposite direction? Instead of trying to destroy it directly, what if we created a quantum barrier that prevents it from accessing subspace? Soreth's tendrils quivered with interest. A dimensional lock? Fascinating theory, but the energy requirements would be astronomical, Elena finished. But not impossible. Captain Rodriguez joined them, her face grim. Doctor, we're picking up unusual readings from the null tide. It's changing course. That shouldn't be possible, Soreth protested. It has always followed the path of least resistance between energy sources. Well, it's not doing that anymore, Maya replied. It's heading directly toward us. The prismatic insight accelerated away from the approaching void, its engines straining at maximum capacity, despite being one of the fastest vessels in the Yi. Collective fleet, the ship barely maintained its distance from the pursuing darkness. It's tracking us specifically, Talix said, feathers flattened in distress as he manipulated the navigation controls. This isn't random movement. On the bridge, Captain Rodriguez watched the tactical display with growing concern. The null tide had formed what appeared to be a tendril, extending toward their vessel at speeds that defied their previous observations. "It's never exhibited this behavior before?" she demanded. "Never," confirmed Lice. "It always moved as a uniform mass until now." Hayes studied the sensor readings. "It's almost like it's hunting us, or adapting to our presence," Maya said quietly. She turned to the communications officer. "Contact the Dauntless. Tell them to prepare for emergency retrieval and have weapon systems on standby." Talek swiveled his head toward her, eyes widening. "Weapons? Against the void? That has never worked before, I know," Maya finished, "but we've never seen it act like this before either. Something about our presence has changed its behavior. We need to be prepared for anything." The null tide's tendril suddenly accelerated, moving at nearly twice its previous speed. "Evasive maneuvers," Maya ordered. The prismatic insight veered sharply, its inertial dampeners straining to compensate. The tendril adjusted course with impossible precision. "It's predicting our movements," Hayes realized aloud. "It's learning." Maya made a decision. "All hands, prepare for dimensional jump. Talix, plot a course directly to the Dauntless." "But Captain," Lise objected, "short-range dimensional jumps require precise calculations. Without proper preparation, we—" "Don't have time," Maya interrupted. "That thing will overtake us in minutes." She moved to Talix's station. "I've seen your navigational interfaces. They're intuitive enough. I'll help you calculate the jump." The avian being hesitated, then nodded, shifting to allow Maya access to the controls. Together, they input the coordinates for the dimensional jump, a technology similar to Earth's Anderson drive but refined over millennia. "Jump calculations at 87%, Talix announced. "We need at least 95% for safety parameters." "We don't have time for safety parameters," Maya responded. "Execute jump at 90%. The tendril was less than 50 kilometers behind them when the prismatic insight vanished in a flash of light, reappearing near the Dauntless, but not without cost. The ship's rear section had been partially caught by the null tide, leaving a clean shear where nearly 20% of the vessel had simply ceased to exist. Emergency force fields snapped into place, preventing atmospheric loss as alarms blared throughout the damaged ship. "Damage report," Maya called, pulling herself up from where the sudden transition had thrown her. "Aft section's gone," Hayes reported, checking the ship's systems. "Engineering is intact, but main power is fluctuating. Life support at 60% capacity." "All science. Data secured," Elena added, entering the bridge with Sorath. "But we lost 2 collective researchers in Section 7. Maya turned to Lise and Talix, whose body language conveyed clear shock. "I'm sorry for your losses, but we need to get everyone transferred to the Dauntless immediately." As evacuation procedures began, Maya stood at the viewport, staring at the distant stars. What they had just witnessed changed everything. The null tide wasn't just a mindless force of nature. It had shown purposeful behavior, adaptation, pursuit. It had hunted them. The observation mission's findings sent shockwaves through the harmonious collective. News that the null tide could alter its behavior, could potentially target specific vessels, sparked panic throughout the massive fleet. High Arbiter Nix convened an emergency session aboard the Concordance, with representatives from all major species in attendance. Maya and her team presented their findings to a chamber filled with fear. "It attempted to isolate and consume your vessel specifically?" asked a luminous being composed of pure plasma energy. "Yes," Maya confirmed. "And it displayed adaptive intelligence in its pursuit." Murmurs of alarm rippled through the gathering. "This changes our understanding completely," Nix stated, liquid metal form shifting anxiously. "If the tide can learn, can pursue targets intelligently, then running is no longer an option," Maya finished. "You can't outrun something that can think. "What do you propose, Captain?" Nix asked. Maya took a deep breath. "A direct engagement. The Earth fleet will arrive within 6 days. 47 warships, each carrying experimental weapons based on Dr. Reyes's quantum barrier theory." The chamber erupted in protest. "You wish to attack it?" demanded a colonial entity of thousands of small organisms that moved as one. "Previous attacks only accelerated its advance." "Previous attacks weren't conducted by humans," Hayes countered, stepping forward. "With respect, your species evolved, without the capacity for strategic warfare. Ours mastered it." Silence fell across the chamber as his words registered. "What Commander Hayes means," Elena interjected more diplomatically, "is that human military doctrine approaches problems differently. We don't just apply force, we analyze vulnerabilities, adapt tactics, and utilize combined arms approaches." "You would make war on a force of nature," observed an elder Sci-Fi, feathers drooping with age and wisdom. "No," Maya corrected. "We would make war on an intelligent threat. There's a difference." High Arbiter Nix's form rippled thoughtfully. "The concept is difficult for many here, but our alternatives have been exhausted." He turned to address the assembly. "The collective. Council will vote. Do we accept the human proposal for direct military engagement?" The vote passed, though barely. Many species abstained, unwilling to explicitly endorse violence even to ensure their survival. As preparations for the Earth fleet's arrival continued, Maya found herself increasingly isolated from the collective leadership. Despite their formal acceptance of human military assistance, most species maintained a careful distance, their discomfort with human biology and war-making capacity evident in every interaction. Maya stood in the Concordance's strategic center, a vast chamber where holographic displays showed real-time movements of all vessels in collective space. She watched as thousands of civilian ships evacuated worlds lying in the null tide's projected path. "They're afraid of us," she said quietly as Hayes joined her. "Can you blame them?" he replied. "We're everything their evolutionary history taught them to fear. High-gravity adapted predators with aggressive instincts and advanced weapons. We came to help them. Yes. But our help comes in a form they find morally repugnant." Hayes gestured to the displays. "They value life so highly that the concept of sacrificing some to save others is nearly incomprehensible. Every death weighs on them equally." Maya frowned. "That's beautiful in its way," Hayes finished. "Their entire civilization evolved without the concept of acceptable casualties." "It's also why they're losing," Maya said bluntly. "Sometimes survival requires sacrifice." "A very human perspective, Captain," said a voice behind them. They turned to find Lise hovering nearby, its crystalline structure pulsing with subdued colors. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop," the Arbiter continued, "but your conversation touches on the fundamental difference between our civilizations. The collective evolved to preserve all life at all costs. Humans evolved to survive at any cost. Those aren't mutually exclusive," Maya argued. "Aren't they?" Liz countered. "Your species' history suggests otherwise. When faced with existential threats, humans consistently prioritize the survival of the group over the individual, the species over ethical ideals." "That's not fair," Hayes protested. "We've fought wars specifically to defend our ethics and ideals." "Yes," Lise acknowledged, "which is perhaps the most alien concept of all to us, that violence could ever serve peace." Before either officer could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. The central holographic display shifted to show a surge of activity at the edge of the system. "The null tide has accelerated," a collective operator announced, voice vibrating with fear. "New projected arrival, 36 hours. "That's impossible," Maya protested. "Your models showed we had at least 7 days." "It has never moved." This quickly before, the operator responded. Something has changed. Maya met Hayes's gaze, both thinking the same thing. Their reconnaissance mission had somehow provoked this acceleration. "Contact Earth," she ordered. "Tell them we need the fleet now. Not in 6 days. Now." "Captain," Hayes cautioned, "the Anderson drive isn't designed for multiple consecutive jumps. Asking them to push the technology beyond tested limits is exactly what I'm doing," Maya finished. "Because if that thing reaches the concordance before we're ready, none of this matters anyway." Lyse drifted closer. "What are you planning, Captain?" Maya's expression hardened. "A fighting retreat. We evacuate the concordance, fall back to defensible positions, and buy time until reinforcements arrive. The concordance houses over 50 million beings," Lyse protested. "Complete evacuation would take days we no longer have." "Then we prioritize," Maya said firmly. "Essential personnel and vulnerable populations first, and we prepare to defend the station while evacuation continues." "Defend it how?" Lyse asked. "The collective has no defensive weaponry." "The Dauntless does," Maya replied. "And I've seen your fabrication technology. With your help, we can temporarily convert some of your systems to defensive purposes." Lyse's crystalline body flickered with rapid color changes that the translator couldn't interpret. Finally, it said, "You are asking us to become what we have spent millennia evolving away from." "I'm asking you to survive," Maya corrected. "And sometimes survival means becoming something you never wanted to be." Word of the accelerated threat spread through the concordance like wildfire, triggering panic among many species unused to existential danger. The vast station, designed for harmony and communal living, had no protocols for mass evacuation or defense. In the chaos, Maya's team worked alongside a small group of collective volunteers to implement makeshift defensive measures. The Dauntless docked with the station, its systems integrated with the Concordance's power grid to extend its shields around critical sections. Dr. Elena Reyes and Soreth coordinated with engineering teams to modify the station's massive energy distribution network, turning it into an improvised version of Elena's quantum barrier theory. "It's untested," Elena warned Maya as they reviewed the modifications, "and without proper containment, the energy feedback could be catastrophic." "Will it slow the null tide?" Maya asked. "In theory, yes. It should create a dimensional interference pattern that makes it harder for the tide to exist in both normal space and subspace simultaneously." "Do it," Maya ordered. Throughout the station, human crew members worked alongside increasingly diverse collective volunteers. As word spread of the human defense plan, more species overcame their biological revulsion to offer assistance. Commander, Hayes coordinated from a makeshift command center, directing evacuation efforts while integrating the Dauntless's tactical systems with the station's sensors. "Evacuation is at 28%, he reported to Maya. "Priority groups first, as ordered, but we're seeing bottlenecks at transfer points." "Delegate evacuation command to the collective representatives," Maya decided. "They know their people better than we do. We focus on defense." A small delegation of collective leaders approached, led by High Arbiter Nix and a new figure, an enormous entity composed of what appeared to be living stone, its surface etched with glowing runes. "Captain Rodriguez, this is Elder Koth of A, the monolith Concordat," Nix introduced. "Their species has reconsidered their position on defensive measures, the massive stone being inclined slightly in what Maya interpreted as a bow. My species once waged war millions of years ago before we achieved peace. The memories remain in our mineral records. We offer this knowledge in service of survival." Maya's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You're offering to help with defense. Preparations?" "We are offering to help you kill," Koth corrected, voice rumbling like an avalanche. "A concept we have not contemplated for eons, but one that may now be necessary." "Captain," Nix interjected, "more species are joining Elder Koth. Those with any martial history, however ancient, are volunteering. Maya looked from the liquid metal arbiter to the living stone monolith. I thought violence was anathema to the collective. Extinction is more so, Nix responded simply. Desperate times demand desperate measures. As they spoke, the station shuddered. Alarms blared as sensor readings flooded the command displays. "Multiple contact points," Hayes called out. "The null tide is probing the station's outer rings." Maya rushed to the tactical display. The null tide had arrived hours ahead of predictions, sending tendrils of darkness to test the station's defenses like a predator seeking weakness. "Activate the quantum barriers," she ordered. "All non-essential personnel evacuate immediately. This is no longer a drill." As if in response, the null tide surged forward, its darkness seeming to flow like living ink against the stars, beautiful, alien, and utterly deadly. "May the cosmic harmony protect us all," whispered Lise. "I prefer good planning and better weapons," Hayes muttered, but there was no heat in his words, just determination. The first battle between humanity, the harmonious collective, and the null tide had begun. Battlefield adaptation. The null tide struck with a force that defied conventional physics. Where its tendrils touched the concordance's outer sections, matter simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, not damaged, but erased from reality itself. Only the hastily erected quantum barriers prevented it from consuming the station's core. Maya watched from the command center as the barrier fluctuated under the assault. "Status report!" "Barriers holding at 73% integrity," Elena reported, fingers flying across the sensor controls. "But the energy consumption is off the charts. We can't maintain this for more than 6 hours." Through the viewport, Maya could see the darkness flowing around the shimmer of the barrier field, probing for weaknesses. The null tide had split into a dozen tendrils, each attacking different sections simultaneously. "It's testing our defenses," Hayes observed. "Like it knows exactly what we're doing." High Arbiter Nix's liquid metal form undulated with stress patterns. "Evacuation is proceeding through the emergency jump gates, but we still have over 30 million beings aboard. We need at least 12 hours. Maya made a quick decision. "We need to take the fight to it. Sitting behind barriers waiting for it to break through isn't a strategy." "Take the fight how?" Lise asked, crystalline structure pulsing urgently. "Conventional weapons pass through it." "Then we use unconventional ones," Maya responded. She turned to Elder Koth, whose stone body had been still as a mountain during the chaotic first minutes of the attack. "You said your species once waged war. What weapons did you use against energy-based life forms?" Koth's surface runes glowed brighter. "Phase-shifted matter. Weapons that exist partially in subspace as the tide does." "Can you create such weapons? Now?" "With sufficient energy and raw materials, yes. But the knowledge is ancient and imperfect." Maya nodded decisively. "Commander Hayes, coordinate with Elder Koth. Use the Dauntless's fabrication bay and whatever resources the collective can provide. Dr. Reyes, I need you to keep those barriers operational as long as possible." "What will you be doing, Captain?" Elena asked. Maya checked her tactical display, where a small alert had just appeared at the system's edge. "Meeting our reinforcements." The Earth fleet arrived in stages, battered, smoking, but intact. Admiral Chen's flagship, the UEDF Indomitable, had pushed its Anderson drive beyond all safety parameters to arrive first with a vanguard of 12 ships. "We lost 5 vessels during the transitions," Chen reported grimly over the secure channel. "Drive failures, structural collapses. The technology wasn't ready for this kind of stress." Maya absorbed the losses with a heavy heart. 5 ships meant nearly 1,000 human lives. Colleagues, friends, perhaps even friends of friends? "The rest of the fleet?" she asked. coming in waves over the next 16 hours, assuming their drives hold. Chen studied the tactical feed from the concordance. That thing is bigger than our intelligence suggested. And smarter, Maya added. It's displaying tactical behavior, Admiral, probing our defenses, testing weaknesses. Chen's weathered face hardened. Then we hit it before it figures us out. What's your assessment of these quantum barriers? Effective, but temporary. They're buying us time, nothing more. And the collective? Are they contributing to their own defense? Maya hesitated. In their own way. They've never had to fight. A war before, Admiral. Violence isn't just foreign to them. It's anathema to their evolutionary psychology. Then why are we risking human lives to save them? Chen demanded, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Because they asked for help, Maya replied simply. And because if we don't stop this thing here, Earth is eventually in its path. Chen nodded reluctantly. The first wave of ships carries the prototype quantum disruptors, untested technology against an unknowable enemy. No pressure. Maya allowed herself a grim smile. Standard operating procedure for humanity, sir. Indeed. Chen out. As the communication ended, Maya stared at the approaching human vessels. Despite everything, pride swelled in her chest. Humanity hadn't hesitated when an alien species begged for help. They'd come running, not just the Dauntless, but the entire defense fleet, risking experimental technology and thousands of lives for beings they'd never met. Perhaps the collective's fear of Deathworlders wasn't entirely justified. The first coordinated attack against the Null Tide began 3 hours later. Based on Koth's ancient knowledge and Elena's quantum theory, the human fleet had retrofitted their weapon systems with phase shift technology, allowing their energy weapons to briefly exist in the same subspace domain as the Tide itself. Maya stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, now undocked from the Concordance and taking point position in the attack formation. All ships report ready, Captain, Hayes announced from Tactical. Phase shift systems online. Begin attack pattern Sierra, Maya ordered. Coordinated fire on my mark. The human fleet moved with precision born of centuries of military doctrine, forming a three-dimensional sphere around the largest concentration of the Null Tide. In the command center of the Concordance, dozens of collective species watched in silent fascination as humans demonstrated the art of warfare. Mark! Maya called. 23 ships fired simultaneously, their weapons releasing not the usual energy beams, but strange, shimmering projectiles that seemed to flicker in and out of visible reality. Where they struck the Null Tide, the darkness recoiled. The first time any weapon had affected it directly. Direct hits, Hayes reported, excitement rising in his voice. We're registering a 12% reduction in tide mass. It's working, Elena breathed in disbelief. All ships, continue barrage, Maya ordered. Maintain formation and... Her command was cut short as the Null Tide suddenly contracted, pulling back from all attack points simultaneously. For a brief moment, Maya allowed herself to hope they had driven it off. Then, with stunning speed, it surged forward again, not as multiple tendrils but as a unified mass, striking directly at the human ships. Evasive maneuvers! Maya shouted, but the warning came too late for 3 vessels on the formation's edge. The darkness enveloped them completely. When it receded, nothing remained. Not debris, not energy signatures, nothing. 3 ships gone, Hayes reported, voice tight with shock. The Valiant, Phoenix, and Daedalus just gone. Nearly 900 lives erased in an instant. More alarming still was what happened next. The Null Tide began to pulse with strange rhythmic patterns, almost like a heartbeat. Where their weapons struck it now, the damage was minimal. It's adapting, Elena said, analyzing the sensor readings. Shifting its quantum frequency to avoid our phase match. How is that possible? Maya demanded. It would need to understand the principles behind our weapons. Maybe it does, Elena replied. grimly. Maybe it's not just intelligent. Maybe it learns by consuming. Those 3 ships it took. What if it absorbed their knowledge along with their matter? The implications stunned everyone on the bridge into momentary silence. All ships, cease, fire and regroup, Maya finally ordered. Fall back to defensive positions around the Concordance. As the fleet retreated, the null tide did not pursue immediately. Instead, it continued its strange pulsations, growing visibly larger with each beat. It's not just adapting, Hayes realized aloud. It's evolving. The War Council aboard the Indomitable was somber. Admiral Chen, Captain Rodriguez, Dr. Reyes, and representatives from both the human fleet and the collective gathered to reassess their strategy in light of the first engagement's failure. 3 ships lost and minimal impact on the target, Chen summarized. And now it appears immune to our phase shift weapons. Not immune, Elena corrected. It adapted its quantum frequency. If we could modulate our weapons to match its new frequency, it would just adapt again, Maya finished. We need something it can't adapt to. Lise, who had joined the council as the collective's scientific liaison, pulsed with subdued colors. Perhaps we are approaching this incorrectly. If the tide learns by consuming, perhaps we should focus on containment rather than destruction. Admiral Chen frowned. Containment how? We can barely touch the thing. The quantum barriers are still holding, Elena pointed out. They don't damage the tide, but they do prevent it from advancing. We can't shield the entire galaxy, Chen countered. No, agreed High Arbiter Nix, who had projected his consciousness into the meeting as a holographic representation. But perhaps we could trap it in a closed system. All eyes turned to the liquid metal arbiter. Explain, Chen demanded. The Concordance houses an experimental technology, a dimensional anchor. It was designed to stabilize wormholes for transportation, but theoretically, it could be modified to create a closed dimensional pocket, a space completely cut off from normal space-time. Elena's eyes widened. A prison dimension. Trap the tide where it can't threaten anyone. Could it work? Maya asked, looking between Elena and Nix. Possibly, Elena replied cautiously. But there are problems. First, the anchor would need to be placed at the center of the tide's mass. Second, it would have to be activated manually. No remote detonation would work through the dimensional interference. So, suicide mission, Chen stated flatly. Not necessarily, Nix countered. The ship deploying the anchor would have approximately 6 minutes to escape the dimensional collapse. Difficult, but not impossible. Maya exchanged glances with Hayes, both thinking the same thing. 6 minutes might as well be 6 seconds when dealing with the null tide's adaptability. There's another issue, Elena added reluctantly. The energy requirements are astronomical. We'd need to sacrifice the Concordance itself. Its entire power grid would fuel the initial dimensional tear. Silence fell across the council. The Concordance wasn't just a station, it was the heart of the collective, their greatest achievement, home to billions and repository of their combined knowledge. No, Chen said firmly, we're not sacrificing their civilization to save ours. There must be another way. To everyone's surprise, it was Nix who disagreed. With respect, Admiral, that is our decision to make. If sacrificing the Concordance saves the rest of the collective, saves untold trillions across the galaxy, then the exchange, while painful, is logical. It's more than logical, added a new voice. Elder Koth had entered silently, his massive stone form dwarfing the humans present. It is right. The Concordance was built to preserve life and knowledge. What better final purpose than to save all life in the galaxy? Maya studied the collective representatives with newfound respect. You've evacuated what percentage of the station? 63%, Nix replied. All vital knowledge has been transferred. What remains is structure, not essence. Admiral Chen still looked troubled. Even if we agree to this plan, Who would volunteer for the deployment mission? The odds of survival are minimal. I will, said a voice from the door. All heads turned to see Commander Jackson Hayes standing at attention. Commander, Maya began to protest. With respect, Captain, Hayes interrupted. I've studied the tide's movement patterns more than anyone. I know how it thinks, how it moves. If anyone has a chance of placing that anchor and getting out alive, it's me. Maya wanted to object, but she knew he was right. Hayes had spent every waking moment since their first encounter analyzing the tide's behavior. If anyone could predict its actions, it was him. You won't go alone, she said instead. I'll command. The mission! Now it was Admiral Chen's turn to protest. Captain Rodriguez, you're too valuable to... To what, sir? To risk my life alongside my crew? That's not how Earth leadership works. Maya's tone made it clear the matter wasn't open for discussion. Chen recognized the look in her eyes and nodded, reluctantly. Very well. We'll prepare a specialized strike team. Fast ship, best pilots we've got. He turned to Nix and Koth. How quickly can this anchor device be prepared? 12 hours, Nix replied. We've already begun the modifications based on Dr. Reyes's recommendations. Then we have 12 hours to prepare, Chen said. God help us all. While the anchor device was being prepared, the null tide continued its assault on the Concordance's barriers. With each passing hour, the quantum shields weakened further as power was diverted to evacuation efforts and anchor preparations. Maya used the time to assemble her strike team, 6 volunteers from across the human fleet, each with specialized skills vital to the mission's success. They gathered in the Dauntless's briefing room for final preparations. Once more, from the top, Maya instructed. Lieutenant Park, you'll pilot the Hermes. It's our fastest shuttle, modified with additional shield generators and emergency thrusters. Commander Hayes will navigate, guiding you through the tide's movement patterns. Park nodded, her expression calm despite the mission parameters. Understood, Captain. Dr. Rivera, you're responsible for the anchor's calibration during approach. We'll only get one shot at this. The quantum physicist nodded grimly. The calculations are set. Dimensional collapse will initiate exactly 6 minutes after activation. Chief Okafor, you'll monitor shield integrity and power distribution. Yes, ma'am, the engineering chief replied. I've modified the shields to cycle through quantum frequencies. Should buy us some extra time if the tide tries to adapt. Sergeant Chen and Corporal Watkins, you're our insurance policy. If anything goes wrong with the automated systems, you'll handle manual deployment. The 2 Marines acknowledged their roles with stoic nods. Questions? Maya asked, looking around the room. Just one, Captain, Hayes said quietly. What aren't you telling us about this mission? Maya hesitated, then sighed. The collective scientists believe there's a possibility, small but real, that the dimensional anchor might not just trap the tide. It might destroy it completely by collapsing its quantum structure. That's good news, isn't it? Park asked. Confused. Potentially. But it also means the tide might sense the existential threat and throw everything it has at stopping us. We've seen it adapt to lesser threats already. This might trigger something worse. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. So we're either ending this war, Hayes summarized, or escalating it beyond anything we've seen. That's about the size of it, Maya confirmed. Any second thoughts? She was met with resolute expressions from every team member. That's what I thought, she said with pride. Get some rest. We launch in 5 hours. As the team dispersed, Dr. Elena Reyes caught up with Maya in the corridor. Captain, there's something else you should know, she said in a low voice. I've been analyzing the sensor data from our encounters with the tide. There's a pattern I hadn't noticed before. What kind of pattern? Elena handed her a data pad showing complex waveform analyses. The tide's quantum fluctuations aren't random. They're cyclical, almost like a language. Maya looked up sharply. You think it's trying to communicate? I think it might not understand that it's destroying sentient life, Elena clarified. Its existence in subspace might mean our reality is as alien to it as it is to us. You're suggesting it's not malevolent? I'm suggesting it might be operating on instinct rather than intent, like a plant growing towards sunlight, not realizing it's breaking through a wall. Maya processed this new perspective. Does this change our approach? Elena hesitated. Maybe not the method, but perhaps the mindset. If we're dealing with an unknown form of life rather than a mindless void or malevolent force, there might be ethical considerations. Ethics won't matter much if it consumes the galaxy, Maya pointed out. No, Elena conceded, but understanding its nature might help us predict its reactions. Knowledge is power, especially when facing the unknown. Maya considered this, then nodded. Keep analyzing the patterns. If you discover anything conclusive before the mission launches, let me know immediately. As Elena departed, Maya found herself alone in the corridor, the weight of command heavier than ever. The mission ahead had slim chances of success, and now she had to consider whether they were fighting a malevolent enemy or simply an incomprehensible life form following its nature. Either way, the stakes remained the same. Stop the null tide, or watch it consume everything. The launch bay of the Indomitable buzzed with activity as final preparations for the mission proceeded. The Hermes shuttle had been extensively modified, weapons stripped out to make room for enhanced shields, and the dimensional anchor device secured in its cargo hold. High Arbiter Nix and Elder Koth had come to oversee the final checks on the free anchor. The device itself was deceptively small, a crystalline sphere roughly 1 meter in diameter, glowing with inner light that seemed to shift between dimensions. The anchor contains the accumulated knowledge of 17 collective species, Nix explained to Admiral Chen as they watched the final calibrations. Energy manipulation techniques refined over millennia. Combined with human quantum theory, Chen added, nodding toward Dr. Reyes, who was making final adjustments. A fitting symbol of our cooperation, Koth observed, stone body radiating warmth, though it comes at great cost. Chen's expression darkened. Those costs aren't over yet. Across the bay, Maya conducted final checks with her strike team. Each wore specialized environmental suits, designed to provide limited protection against quantum fluctuations. Remember, the Hermes' sensors won't give you much warning once you're inside the tide's influence, Elena explained, adjusting settings on Hayes' suit. You'll be flying partially blind. We'll manage, Hayes replied confidently. I've memorized its movement patterns. Patterns that might change when it senses the anchor, Maya reminded him. Stay flexible. A sudden alarm blared throughout the ship, causing everyone to freeze. Admiral Chen to the bridge, came the urgent announcement. The null tide is accelerating its attack. Chen rushed to a nearby console, calling up sensor data. It's concentrating all its mass on a single section of the barriers. They're failing. Maya made an instant decision. We launch now. No time for final checks. Captain, the anchor calibrations aren't complete, Elena protested. They'll have to be good enough, Maya replied grimly. If those barriers fall before we're underway, this mission is over before it begins. Admiral Chen nodded his agreement. Go. We'll hold it off as long as we can. The strike team boarded the Hermes with practiced efficiency. Lieutenant Park initiated launch procedures while Maya took the command chair. All stations report, she ordered. Navigation ready, Hayes confirmed. Engineering systems nominal, Chief Okafor reported. Anchor stable, Dr. Rivera added, though his tone suggested less than full confidence. The shuttle's engines hummed to life as the bay doors opened, revealing the chaos beyond. The null tide had formed what looked like a massive battering ram, hammering against the weakening quantum barriers protecting the concordance. The human fleet had positioned itself in defensive formation, their modified weapons firing constantly to disrupt the assault. "Launch trajectory plotted," Park announced. "Ready on your command." Maya took one last look at her team, 6 volunteers on what might be a one-way mission. "Launch." The Hermes shot from the bay, immediately taking evasive maneuvers as it headed toward the heart of the conflict. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," came the broadcast across all frequencies. "Operation Dimensional Lock is underway. Provide cover fire for the Hermes at all costs." The human fleet responded instantly, intensifying their barrage against the null tide. The distraction worked, momentarily. The massive concentration attacking the barriers wavered, portions of its mass shifting to address this new threat. "It's working," Hayes reported. "The tide is dividing its attention." "Trajectory adjusted," Park confirmed. "ETA to insertion point 4 minutes. On the main view screen, Maya watched as the human fleet engaged in a desperate battle to buy them time. Ship after ship took position between the Hermes and the encroaching darkness, absorbing attacks meant for the shuttle. "We're being hailed," Okafor announced. "It's the Dauntless." Maya tapped her console. "This is Rodriguez." "Captain, this is Dr. Reyes. I've completed the pattern analysis. The tide's fluctuations, they're definitely communication." "You're certain?" "Yes. And there's more. The pattern's intensified when we started attacking. I think it believes it's defending itself. It might not even understand that it's consuming sentient life." Maya processed this revelation. "Can we communicate back? Make it understand?" "Not in the time we have," Elena admitted, "but this might explain why it's been escalating. Every attack we've launched has triggered a defensive response." The Hermes rocked suddenly as a tendril of darkness brushed against its shields. "Shields at 82%, Okafor reported tensely. 2 minutes to insertion point," Park added. Maya made her decision. "Maintain course. Whether it understands or not, we can't let it continue." "Captain," Hayes said suddenly, "look at the tide's movement pattern." The view screen showed something unprecedented. The entirety of the null tide was reconfiguring, withdrawing from its assault on the concordance and forming into a tight sphere directly in the Hermes' path. "It knows," Maya realized with a chill. "It knows exactly what we're trying to do." The sphere of absolute darkness hung in space before them, waiting. No longer attacking, no longer advancing, just waiting. "Orders, Captain?" Park asked, tension evident in her voice. Maya stared at the tactical display. The tide had positioned itself perfectly to intercept them, no matter what evasive maneuvers they attempted. It had adapted again, not just to their weapons, but to their strategy. It was learning at an exponential rate. "Full speed ahead," she ordered quietly. "Take us right through the center." As the Hermes accelerated toward the heart of darkness, Maya wondered if the mission was already lost, if humanity's greatest trait, adaptability, had finally met its match in an enemy that could adapt even faster. The darkness loomed larger on the view screen, seeming to consume the stars themselves as they approached. "Impact in 30 seconds, Park announced, voice steady despite everything. "Anchor ready for deployment," Rivera confirmed. Maya looked around at her team one last time. "Whatever happens next, remember why we're here. To protect those who cannot protect themselves. That's what humans do." As the Hermes plunged into the darkness, the view screen went completely black. For a terrible moment, Maya felt the same vertigo that had claimed so many collective vessels. Before them, the sensation of reality itself unraveling around them. Then Hayes's voice cut through the darkness, fierce with determination. "Not today," he growled. "Not on our watch."